every single year, the whole industry is changing in some way. And you just have to I don't know.
Just got to keep.
I don't know. It's rough. It's rough out here.
Yeah. But I mean, that's why we're doing it ourselves. It's like some people choose a specific path, and that's great if that works for them. Our path is like making the things.
The brute force of
Yes. Hi, I'm Jaco.
And I'm Mark.
And welcome back to Department Spotlight. It's the show where we talk to our friends and colleagues about their experiences in the film industry. Today, our only friends and colleagues are ourselves. So, yeah.
Wow. And since it's the end of the year and it's only us, we thought that it might be cool to do a sort of year in review of what we learned on YouTube and making films and touching a bit on freelancing.
So, without any further ado, let's get into it. Cool. Okay, so Mark, let's talk about this year. It's been busy.
It's been a year, yeah.
It's been a whole year. Okay, so I mean, let's list off the things that we did this year. We did this podcast. We released 12 movies, short films. We released behind the scenes for most of those movies. We did editing breakdowns. We did writing breakdowns. We had a couple of shows that died.
Rip.
And died from...
Rip between the setups.
Yeah, shame.
It's a good idea. Don't know why you didn't like it.
Yeah, I mean...
Calling you out. No, I'm kidding.
What we mean by died is obviously just they didn't get enough views to justify doing them, which is kind of sad because it was like we had this plan when we shot the 6 shorts in 6 weeks where it was like, okay, we're shooting a movie, but we're also getting between the setups video, which is like interviews on set, we getting bloopers, we getting the behind the scenes video, and that was gonna like last us the whole month, But then, I don't know if it's just because we were a new channel or if it's because they just weren't good videos. I like them. But yeah, people just didn't watch them.
But if you want to go back and watch them, then...
Yeah, go do that. Speaking of like things dying and whatever, how has it changed our content? Because obviously when the pandemic hit and we couldn't make more movies, we had to think about, okay, what else are we gonna put online, right?
Yeah. I think one of the main things was that we had that sort of 6 months of videos and behind the scenes and stuff all shot and ready to go. Well, we were editing them as we were going, but they were all shot. And then we were planning to, in those 6 months while we were editing and releasing them, we would be making the stuff for the second half of the year. But then when COVID happened, it sort of stopped everything, and then...
Yeah, because we couldn't have a crew, literally.
Yeah, and then when we were able to, later on in the year, get back to sort of making shorts, we had caught up, you know what I mean? And then it felt like we started having to play catch up a bit.
Yeah.
And I think that's when it became a bit hectic. It felt good, we were always going to be 6 months ahead. You know what I mean? If
the pandemic didn't happen.
yeah. So then, it shifted quite a lot actually, because then we had to start doing stuff online more.
Yeah, and also there was one film that we couldn't release because we entered it into a festival that was gonna get back to us much earlier, so we were still getting ready sort of for the schedule, but because the pandemic, they postponed the festival to August, meaning that we would only hear about it in a year if we got in July, so we had to hold back on that film. So we that's when Malamila came out because we ran out of films to show. But it also gave us a little bit of time to think about things because I think even though there was the pandemic and we weren't shooting with a crew, we were still shooting. We were still writing. We wrote a feature script, which was cool. We started like collaborating online a lot more, and that's when we figured out how to use Zoom. Thinking first we're gonna use Skype. Like I think the first thing that we had to like shoot during the lockdown was a podcast, because like the podcasts were also like a little bit ahead, but then we ran out of podcasts and we had to do the cinematography podcast. Tried Skype didn't really work, and then we found Zoom, because like everybody found Zoom. I feel like the whole world was like, Zoom, it has all these features. I'm sure like if people who invested in Zoom before the pandemic are rich now, they must be.
Yeah. Yeah, but then it worked out. I think also what was an interesting project was Home, because that was something that was born out of purely like what was happening at the moment. Even like the narrative.
Yeah. It's like even though we couldn't make films with a crew, we still wanted to make things, right? And it wasn't just we just making things to make things. It was like sort of an expression of how we felt, because like I was back, I'm still back in Bloemfontein, which is where I grew up, and I was just like, let's make this thing that would be sort of easy to shoot, but that's also like relevant to the times, if that doesn't sound too pretentious. From writing that feature script, we found the program Arc Studio Pro as well, which they made free for like a long time, which it's now a paid app. Arc Studio Pro, which is a writing software that we used or use now, and it just allows us to work together at the same time, even though you're in Johannesburg, I'm in Bloemfontein, and it just allowed us to like express all these ideas, all these feelings that we were feeling. Because that was also, it wasn't at the beginning of the lockdown. That was like 3-4 months in. I can't remember.
Yeah, and we also like reused a lot of stuff that you had shot over the years already.
Oh yeah.
It was like an interesting process to write something for stuff that was already like existing versus the other way around. Like obviously you went and shot a lot of stuff as well, but I mean it started because you had stuff from Cape Town, you had stuff from Bloemfontein, and you had stuff from Joburg, and then the idea was sort of born out of that. So that was like an interesting way of like working it backwards.
Yeah. And then obviously as well, My Scut, which we also shot in lockdown, and that was sort of born out of the competition that CakeNet had, the digital short film competition. They were like, go shoot a movie in a month at your house. Don't leave your house. Just shoot it. And then a bunch of people entered, and I'm pretty proud of that one. We wrote it also just online, thinking about what I had, because obviously I had the camera and stuff and sound equipment or whatever that we needed.
That one was really fun because I really liked how you can see in the writing video that we made as well about when you just like walked around your garden, because we knew you knew you had the idea that you wanted to we wanted to do like a treasure hunt story, and then it was just literally about going into your back garden and finding finding
a route,
like story beats and a route, and
yeah.
and then everything sort of formed really organically. And then I think from that, I think our subsequent writing has also become more contained just naturally. I think it was like a good process to go through. Because it forces you to look more at like the micro instead of the macro, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which was like a really important thing to go through, you know what I mean? Like you can make so much out of just like
what
what's
you
in
have.
your back garden or
Yeah. We thought about this like a lot last year as well when we wrote the original 6 script, which is keep it small. It's a short film. It's not a feature film that you're just doing a shorter version of. So we thought a lot about that last year, but then I think by making Home and My Scut, we were like, thinking even smaller, if that makes sense. Like we could create these like bigger stories out of just one location or a bunch of locations, but it's only narrated. It's things that you don't need, a crew of 20 people to shoot necessarily. I mean, those exist and those are great as well. And we're probably going to make some of those when we get funding. But a short film, if you don't have anything, can be just what you have. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. But I definitely think that stuff that we've learned from doing those kinds of films will also just naturally like be there as we develop others.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
as in, from the script point of view, it will be like we'll just have more experience of like we can actually get more out of just this one location or just this one scene, or you know what I mean, instead
Yeah.
of going sort of bigger unnecessarily, you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I agree. I think I don't want to say inexperienced, maybe when you're just starting, or if you're starting on big things, you don't really think about the minutia of things. You just like, oh, this scene can happen, and then that scene can happen, and yes, there's conflict because of where they are. It's but then when you restricted, I feel like it's when a lot of nuanced ideas come naturally,
Yeah,
something that you wouldn't really think about at the beginning, because that's not
yeah,
really that. But I think that's because that's not really what we're used to seeing. Before you start making your own stuff, it's just Hollywood movies or local movies, but it's like features. Before, if you're not interested in film, you're not going to watch short films. And there aren't a lot of platforms, I think, that are like, oh yeah, here's the thing, watch the short film. It's just as much fun as a feature. It's usually only after you become more interested in film, either deciding you want to go to film school or going to film school or having like a film program at your school, something like that. It's only then when you're like, oh yeah, short films are also a thing, you know?
yeah. I think there are obviously, I think with streaming becoming more of a thing, there are a lot more platforms coming up where short films are being promoted more and becoming more accessible as like a thing that everyone
Yeah,
watches and not just filmmakers, which is really cool.
true. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
Um,
exciting. And it's like, I mean,
and
we can name a few. We could name just in South Africa. There's two that recently popped up, which is SUP, which is starting up in like mid-December, and then there's Cinemagic, which started up in July, which for South Africans is pretty cool because they're cheap. Some of them don't require data. Telkom, which is a phone company, is also starting one up. So I think you're right. Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity. I just hope they don't all go the way of Quibi, you know?
yeah, I mean, I think they've got more of a focus on like cell phone content, which is a nice place for short films to live actually, because they are
Yeah,
like shorter form.
you're used to watching like shorter form videos, like YouTube videos on your phone. So short films should or feels like it's just a progression of that.
Absolutely. Just going back to talking about sort of what we learnt about using what was around us, it reminded me of when we were doing research. Was it last? It was last year, yeah. Last year for Alakrapis,
Oh
when
yeah,
we went to go interview
the
the clown.
clowns.
I can't remember who exactly said it, but we were talking about like clowning and how they were saying that we're asking about like how did they develop their act, and then they were speaking about clowning, and I suppose you'll have learnt about it if you went to like if you like studied theatre as well, that idea that sort of anything can become like a prop or like a part of the story, you
Oh
know what I
yeah,
mean? And the way that sort of clowning is like a mindset or like a lens through which you view things. And I think that's something we learned as well, is that once you start looking like through that lens of like anything can be like a story beat.
yeah,
Yeah, I think that was like a really important thing that we learned. That's like a lesson that we'll have forever, you know?
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's cool, and obviously, everything that we're saying isn't like final. We're still learning. Like, I think
Yeah, for sure.
it's cool that like yeah, we've learned these things, but there's more things that we're gonna learn. It's fun. I don't know. It feels good to like be doing things, and then from this thing that you did, you're like, oh, okay, I can change it this way, or because I did this thing, now I know in this next thing. I mean, I guess an example of that could be proof of concept coming off the back of Redacted, because I think obviously in proof of concept, if you haven't seen it yet, go check it out on the on the YouTube channel. But it's a mockumentary about people making a horror film, and we just made a horror film. So with proof of concept, we were thinking of what could go wrong, what's the conflict of this film, and it was cool because we just had all these things that just naturally came up while we were shooting Redacted.
They were like, they were kind of like absurd as well.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
things that could only happen on a film set.
Yeah, exactly. And I think if we just did proof of concept without doing redacted first, or if we changed the genre and we hadn't done that genre before, I think it wouldn't have been as effective as I think it is.
Yeah, for sure. Because there's like very specific things, like the blood rig, obviously.
Yeah.
But I was also thinking about that recently and how it's really cool that proof of concept is like sort of rounding off the year. It feels like not only a reflection of Redacted, but a reflection of the whole year of making,
Yeah.
like year and a half, I suppose,
Yeah,
of
yeah.
making
Since
short films.
yeah.
Because we
True.
just knew about like I feel like the characters, obviously they're based on like different parts of us and some other people, but kind of not really. But like I feel like the characters when we were coming up with them just came very naturally because it's almost like that thing of like, oh, write about what you know, which I don't think is always true because I think you know, you can learn a thing and then that becomes what you know.
Yeah, but I
um,
mean, it's
but
still
I
it's
feel
still what
like
you know
for
now.
this one, yeah, I feel like for this one, it was exactly what we knew.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like there was never a point where,
yeah. And I mean, we even
you
talk
know,
about it's a passion project. We can't really pay anybody, or
yeah,
you know,
there's a lot of, there's
yeah,
so many in jokes.
yeah, exactly.
People arriving late or people getting a paid gig and like
Leaving,
which is fine.
yeah,
Absolutely,
of
but like
course.
it's just like a funny thing to put in.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I think specifically from the podcast as well, we learned a lot about the different. It's called Department Spotlight. We interviewed all these departments that we don't necessarily have direct experience with. You know, like because of all the content that we've made this year, not just the films, we could put that into our films. You know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like I think we also learned that from doing redacted, like you can't not have a production designer. Just it just doesn't work. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
you have to have
Especially
someone to
on a
design
horror.
the
Yeah.
production.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
And I mean, I think the reason we thought we could do it was because on the 6 shorts we only had a production designer on the one film, and the rest we sort of
yeah.
just made up. But those films, I don't know,
Yeah, that was more
they were mostly
um
comedy ones, so we just used what we had.
yeah, and I feel like we also wrote like for I'm just thinking about specifically like Justine Case. We wrote specifically around the production design elements that we knew we
Yeah.
had we could get.
But also, funny you should bring up just in case, because I should have realized that then already, because I hadn't gotten the boxes yet. Remember, like we didn't have moving boxes.
Oh
On the day of the
yeah.
shoot, I had to send like Janira, who was like our BTS person. She just like went to a couple of like stores when they opened and just like, do you have boxes? And then so even then, like you need a production designer to just
You do.
make sure that all the props are there, make sure that the continuity is the same everywhere.
And I mean, even in the difference between sort of something like redacted and public engagement when there was like specific stuff that had to be made versus something like proof of concept where there wasn't anything sort of specific, I suppose, that had to be made from not having a production designer on Redactor. We did have to make stuff. Even moving on to proof of concept, where we knew we didn't even have to make stuff, we still
Yeah.
learned our lesson.
Yeah.
And got a production designer, because you just need someone even there who just has like an eye for these things.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
then,
Like, for example, there by the staircase, she hung up that sheet because there was like a gym in the background there, right? And we didn't want to really see that. And obviously, if it was just me and you trying to figure out, we wouldn't have just had a sheet to hang up there. But because she's a production designer, she had one, you know? Shout out Raquel.
yeah. And she just, I don't know, planned in such a way that we could just be like, okay, we're shooting this way, you know. And obviously with, you know, proof of concept, it was like gear and stuff is obviously in shot. So that's like the whole point. But then we'd be like, okay, we're shooting this way, and then she would just like dress up behind it.
Yeah,
and then,
yeah. I know what it needs to look like. And when we return to a location, she's like, oh, yeah, okay, this was here, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was just, yeah.
Yeah.
You need a production designer. No matter if you're like the smallest film.
Just get somebody
Really
in
do
that
it.
role.
I mean, even if you are doing it yourself, know how much sort of time or like, I suppose like mental capacity
Yeah.
you have to sort of dedicate to
Yeah,
it. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Just don't think that it's something
Yeah.
that's gonna like come together.
Let's see if we move on to sort of like what we've learned from doing YouTube. I think that's a cool topic. You know, you watch like, I don't know if you how much YouTube other people watch, but I watch a lot of YouTube, and I've been watching a lot of YouTube since I was working at my previous job, because that was a lot of like effects work and whatever, and then there's like no sound. So I would just put a YouTube video in the background just to like listen to it while I work, because like if you're just sitting there in silence clicking, you're going to go insane. You know. Obviously when you're like editing, you can't put a YouTube video in because you need to hear what the people are saying. But when you're like doing effects work and stuff, anyways, so I've been watching like a lot of YouTube. It's sort of embarrassing how much YouTube I watch. I probably have like 4 or 5 hours a day on YouTube, just in general. And it's gotten more since lockdown, obviously. But what I'm getting at is you watch these channels and you think like, and they're like, yeah, you just got to be consistent and then you'll grow and this and that. And so we were like thinking, okay, we're just going to be super consistent. We're going to have a video every Tuesday and every Friday, and a new short film on the first Friday of every month. And we'll just get subscribers. You know, that's just how that's how it works. That's what everybody says. And I think I was sort of very discouraged around May when we only had 180 subscribers, right? Because we started on 56 back when we released the announcement video, which was, I think it was a year ago. It was November 2019, and very quickly we grew to like 100 because, you know, we announced this thing and we told all our friends to subscribe because we're going to be starting this thing in January. And then in like May, we only grew by like 80 people. And I was like, yo, this is rough.
Yeah.
Because by that point, we'd already released like 50 videos. So it was pretty difficult back then. And then we had that video that was generating a lot of interest, which was Avid versus Premiere. And it was one of our podcast extracts. We were just talking about it during our editing podcast. So it wasn't really like there was no B-roll. There was just music and us talking. So I was always sort of like embarrassed about that video, but it was the only thing that was like generating subscribers and interest and views.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you'd be embarrassed about it if it didn't get like as much attention as it did. Because
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
what the amount of views it was getting sort of shifted it away from just being like a conversation to being like this
Educational,
super educational thing that had to like serve a purpose, as opposed to like us just talking about our experiences with like editing programs, like our very like specific,
which is what it was intended to be,
experience.
You know,
Which is what it was intended to be, and then it just became this like whole other thing where it was supposed to be like the like
Yeah, it was number
Our
one.
definitive
Dude, if you search Avid versus Premiere, it
views
was
of.
number one on YouTube. It was not like, number four, number five. It was like the first thing that people would see when they search for that. So,
It's insane.
so it's exactly what you're saying. I think that's why I was embarrassed about it, because we were putting all this effort into our other videos, like the films and the behind the scenes, blah, blah, blah. But then the podcast video extract it was just a conversation. And then all the comments were like, okay, but you didn't talk about this and you didn't talk about that and this. And so,
And it's
yeah,
like, yeah, because we didn't plan on talking about that. Because it's just
exactly.
a
Exactly.
podcast.
But then we refreshed that video, right? I remember asking you, Mark, it was like, okay, let's do this. And you were like, you're insane.
Dude, I don't know
because
how you did that.
because obviously we needed to not only use the programs but learn them as well, right? I mean, I had experience on all of them, some experience, but it was either a long time ago, or it was a different version, or it was just not really to the extent that we were editing our YouTube videos. So it was quite a thing, and we recorded those 2 weeks in advance, luckily. So I had 2 weeks to edit them. I mean, I'm not even talking about the comparison video. I'm talking about on the page, which is the series that I used to compare apples to apples. Because it's a series about the same sort of topic, which was writing, and it had like its own
Same style. layout
style,
and-
editing language. So it would be like easy to know that, okay, in this section this is what I do, in this section this is what I do, and then I can compare. In Premiere I do it like this, in DaVinci I do it like this, in Avid and Final Cut do it that way, and then I can compare them. So that was like the plan. But like when we released the comparison video, that's when the channel really started taking off. We gained a lot of subscribers, a lot of views. And then after that, we were like, okay, we're still going to keep doing what we're doing, which is a film and the podcast and the behind the scenes videos and the editing videos, the writing videos. We're still going to be doing those. But every now and then we'll sprinkle in a special video, right? Like that. And those special videos, I think, are the ones that are catching people's attention. And those are the ones that are getting us subscribers. Because people can now go back and be like, oh, they edited all these videos. Let me go watch how they edit these videos. Or, oh, they made films. Let me go watch their films.
Yeah, and I think that ties back into what we were saying about in our Q&A video, I think it was, that we just did. Go watch that if you haven't. Where we talk about sort of making stuff related to the
To your
subject
channel,
that you're
yeah.
in, to your channel. Like obviously if we had made a what was your funny comparison video?
Applesauce versus banana sauce.
Applesauce versus banana sauce. Like if we released that on the film on a filmmaking channel, then that applesauce versus banana sauce video itself would have probably done well, but then no one would have gone
And subscribe.
to
Yeah.
potentially subscribe or check out the other videos that we had made because they aren't interested in the same thing. But you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah. And just as like an example, when we filmed, you can see in that video, the Q&A video, that when we filmed it, we had 513 subscribers. We filmed that a week ago, and today we've got 550 subscribers. So it's like all these special videos that we're doing are speeding up the growth of the channel, right? Which is then gonna lead to us eventually having our audience who watches our videos, and not just new people coming to watch the comparison videos. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, like the film we just released, besides for Both for Karen, which obviously was on a playlist and that's why it got so many views, but besides for that film, it's the one it got to number one or to 350 views the quickest, and it just keeps going. So what I think you should do as a YouTube creator is make a lot of videos that will bring people to your channel, but don't only do those videos. Do videos that you want to be doing, which is sort of what Sarah Dietschy has always been talking about, one for them, one for me, which I think is very true. Like you do a video that's going to bring people to your channel, but then make sure that you have other videos that's going to keep them there, So yeah, I'm going to say that from my experience, I don't think consistency is the number one factor when it comes to YouTube or growing YouTube fast. I think it's more making the content that people want to watch.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, what are
And
your
then,
thoughts on
yeah.
YouTube?
Yeah, it's, I don't know. It's like, it can be like disheartening sometimes because like you put effort into a thing and then it just,
Yeah, people just don't watch it.
people just don't watch it. And you're just like, why? Like,
Yeah.
I literally have no idea
It's like
why.
if I didn't know these things already, this is the kind of video that I would watch, you know.
Exactly. That's the thing.
Yeah, but I think that comes back to like YouTube isn't promoting us as much for those videos yet.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just been like up and down, I suppose. Because on one hand, I do think that it is very good to just constantly be making something. I think that is one of the beneficial things just for yourself. You spoke about consistency, and yeah, I think it is getting it does get a bit much sometimes. But I think one good thing is just doing it because you have to do it. Trains that sort of thing that I was speaking about in the acting podcast, which is like creativity being a muscle. Like you just keep on just like do it because you just have to do it, and like you may not enjoy doing it at that moment, or and the next day you may, but I think it's just about like training yourself into
Yeah.
doing that thing. And like I suppose you'll figure it out if you really don't like doing it. There are times, I suppose, for both of us where we've been like, ugh, I don't feel like doing this, I don't
Yeah.
like doing this.
Yeah.
But I don't know, like I always not justify it to myself. I always come to that back to that realization of just like you are a person who makes things through video. This is the you do that thing.
Yeah.
So why are you not doing that thing? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I suppose if you can't find that thing, then perhaps do something else. But and I think it's also I think we always wanted to use it for like a platform to grow a community. And I think what going looking at like proof of concept as well, because it had like such a big cast and crew of people. Looking around, it felt like, at the 12th film towards the end of the year, it felt like, hey, we did a thing, you know what I mean? Because we
Yeah.
built this
Yeah, and like a
community of
lot
people who
of
want to come together. And
yeah, and like
so,
most of the people returned. It's not like I mean, there was some people that we hadn't had in productions before, but there was
yeah,
like most of them were like this is their second or even third project
yeah.
that they're doing with us, which was cool.
I don't think for me personally, I could just do YouTube, because I think what we were speaking about previously with the putting up videos and then no one watches them, I think would get a bit too disheartening. But I think if you're using it to supplement that other thing that you like doing, for example, like cooking channels or other filmmaking channels, you know what I mean? Like you're not just making videos to like get views or something. They like serve another purpose of that thing that you enjoy doing. I think that's like a big pro, you know
Yeah,
what I mean?
benefits,
And
yeah.
yeah, but yeah, I don't know, it's rough, it's up and down. I think it's a lot
Yeah.
better now because
Yeah, we're
it's a lot
consistently
better now because
gaining
it's sort of
views and
like
subscribers
hitting a
and
stride, and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
then I suppose it'll get rough again when the stride dies down, and then
I guess so. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Okay. So wrapping up YouTube section, just like be consistent, but make sure that you're not burning out while you're consistent. Rather do the things that get you to your goal, which is if your goal is getting to 1,000 subscribers, then do the videos that will get you 1,000 subscribers rather than breaking your back making 2 videos every week, but then nobody watches them. Yeah, I think
and
that.
yeah, always
Yeah.
make sure that you're supplementing the thing that you like doing.
Yes. 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 Exactly. Exactly. Cool. So let's talk about how we've been like making money this year. How have we funded all these films? How have we been able financially and like with our schedules? How have we been able to afford to do YouTube to the degree that we've been doing it? So what we've been doing is we've been freelancing for a while now, But the freelancing work is more sort of like promotional work, commercial work, editing, things for other people. And while those things pay the bills, and while they're not like the worst thing to create, sometimes you want to make things for yourself, right? And I think that's what we've been doing.
Well, I think it's also making things for yourself, but also keeping the goal in mind of like
Oh yeah, yeah, like the career
we
goal.
want,
Yeah.
yeah, we want like the things that we like doing, like the films, to become the thing that we do for money. You know what I mean?
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
But
yeah,
you
yeah.
can't just jump off, start doing that straight away because it just, I don't know, it just doesn't
Yeah,
work that way.
exactly like we
It's
said
not
in
like
proof of
it's not
concept.
like any other field
Yeah,
in the entire world that works
literally.
that way.
Literally.
Um,
Everywhere else you could just go study it and then immediately have a job. you know?
and then you go do that thing, and it's related to the thing, and then you're
Yeah, and
doing the
it's the
thing.
exact position that you want. Maybe not the exact position, but like in a couple of years you're like there. You're like the manager of the accounting firm. I don't know. But or you could just like go and be an accountant after you studied accounting. Maybe start as a junior accountant, but then you're an accountant. Whereas in the film industry, it's like, oh, you studied film, but it's sort of some in this industry, some people are like, oh, you studied film. Well, we didn't study film, so we're gonna give the opportunities to the people who also didn't study film. you know
Yeah,
so in this industry, it's really about who you know and on what set you can get on. It's like it's not, people are not posting in the newspaper like production designer needed or
totally.
director wanted. It's like you
And
need
it's
to.
also, there's a million and one ways to get into film,
Yeah.
and it feels like every single year there's a million more, and every single year the whole industry is changing in some way, and you just have to like, I don't know,
Just got to keep.
it's rough. It's rough out here.
Yeah. But I mean, that's why we're doing it ourselves. It's like some people choose a specific path, and that's great if that works for them. Our path is like making the things.
The brute force approach.
Yes, exactly. Making the things, figuring out how to do it, finding people to do it with us, and then just keep going. And I think it's already sort of paying off. I can't really talk about how it's paying off because nothing's confirmed yet and nothing is official yet. So, but it is sort of like working in some ways. We just need to keep our heads high, keep doing what we're doing, and like Mark said, keep the goal in mind. I think freelancing is great for paying the bills, and it could also be a fulfilling job where you make things that other people post, and if it's stuff that you believe in, then it's like cool. Yeah, I'll tell my friends I made that thing. But obviously our goal is to do feature films and series and do narrative work. So while I do enjoy doing promotional work, I think there's a lot of other things that I would like to be doing.
So yeah, from working with lots of people this year and doing other freelance work, we sort of formalized ourselves into a company. But I think where we've got sort of other projects on the go, but we as a sort of company right now, we sort of freelance together. But I suppose just finishing off here, we just wanted to maybe give our learnings on freelancing as well and various questions. So what do you want to start with?
How did you find your first clients? Because I mean, I think okay, so there's two things, right? Either you decide I'm just going to go freelance, or you try something else. You try working for a place, and then you decide, okay, no, now I'm going freelance. Or you working in a certain industry, and then you decide, okay, no, I'm going to go freelance in that other industry. So I think it's always scary. That doesn't matter which route you take to start freelancing. I think it's scary thinking like, how am I going to find my first clients? So how did you find your first clients?
I don't know, it's crazy. I think that there's a sort of overlap between freelancing in general, not just film, and just the film industry, where it's a lot to do with networking. Like I didn't find any of the people who I do work for through putting myself out there as like a CV, and
Yeah.
making like a profile for myself, and people were like emailing me, and no, I found out people because I just like got a WhatsApp from like you or someone else being like, hey, I know this person who wants this done, and then you do that thing, and then that person recommends you to other people, and then you just sort of work the like a network that way, which is really funny because it always find like the film industry and freelancing to be it's sort of counterintuitive to what you learn in film school, where they teach you to, oh, you have to sort of, promote yourself. And it's like, yeah, you do have to promote yourself, but like that comes a little bit later, actually. The sort of first steps is just like building it, like the network first, that
Yeah.
sort of starts to grow naturally. And then you start making that name for yourself that you can then build some sort of like, I don't know, brand around like we have. I didn't find that the sort of clients came from, making an online presence and then, the emails started flooding in or something. It doesn't really work that way. It starts from a more like grassroots sort of word of mouth approach, starting small, and then that person refers you to another person, or you have got like other editing friends, or it doesn't have to be editing, it could be like associated to your field, and then they'll recommend you for the thing, and or you're busy right now, and then like for recently, for example, someone approached me for editing work, but I was like super busy, and then I passed the details on to someone else, and I think they were busy and they passed it on to someone else. But you see what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's I think that's how it works more organically than I think making this sort of presence and sort of profile and brand for yourself actually comes a little bit later than doing just the from the ground up word of mouth stuff first, which no one really speaks about.
Yeah.
Everyone,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Like for me, when I did go freelancing, there was like a good 4 months where I didn't have any any work, right? And I knew that was probably going to be the case, so I had like a little bit of a safety net there. But it turned out that the first client that I had was somebody who had also worked at the same place that I worked and now worked for a different company. So and then because they knew me, or because this guy knew me, he could recommend me to his boss, and then that was the
Mm-hmm.
first sort of client that I had, and I did like a couple of things with them. And then the next client, again, somebody that I knew was working with a person, and exactly like you said, Mark, they got too busy, so they passed that person up over to me. So much work came from that as well. I got too busy, so that's where I got you involved as well. So I think it's exactly what you're saying. Like as a freelancer, word of mouth, or like just knowing people, networking, that's the best way to start.
Mm-hmm.
Which is also difficult and intimidating because it's like, yeah, you just need to know people, and that's
Yeah,
that's not
it
very good
is
advice.
wild.
Yeah,
Yeah, but it's kind of true. Like, I don't know, there's also that joke about, I don't know, just jobs and capitalism in general, where it's like you have to have experience to get work, but then how do you get the
yeah, the
experience if
experience
you
without
can't get the
working. Yeah,
work?
yeah,
And I don't know. It's a wild world because there isn't like there isn't sort of a natural. I suppose this goes back to what I was speaking about as well. Just the film, getting into the film industry is like there isn't just like a one entry point. You know what I mean? You think that there's someone just gonna be there at a door that says film industry on it, and then like open it for you and be like, welcome in, and you walk in, and
yeah,
then in that room is standing every single other person
yeah. I
who's
think a
in the
lot of
film industry.
people.
It's like,
I think a lot of people do sort of accept that they're going to have to start as a PA, and they're willing to start as a PA, but it's like, how do you get there? And like you said, it's
yeah,
just, I think maybe even you should try, if somebody's shooting a student film or a short film, you should just volunteer to do it for free. Then you meet people there, and then you're like, okay, listen, on the next thing that you're doing, I'll do another thing for free. Eventually, you start charging.
yeah, for sure.
So then, speaking about charging people, how do you choose your rate?
Um, well, if you're me, then what you do is you undervalue your time, and then you're like, what's happening? And then you ask Jaco, who's been doing it for a while, how much he charges for his time, and then he tells you, and then you're like, okay, cool. No, which I think I mean, I say it as a joke, but I think it's a sort of a good learning point is, and also, I suppose, touches on one of the other questions that we do have here. So we can answer them sort of two in one, as I wrote here, is freelancing lonely work for exactly this reason, is because people think that if you're freelancing, you're like doing it alone, which is not true at all. And I think that if you are trying to figure out how much to charge for your time, find someone who's doing a similar thing and ask them how much they're charging for their time, and then work that according to how much experience they have versus you. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
And if you have the, you know what I mean?
Yeah, if you
So
have the
I think
skills
that
and stuff as well.
it,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be lonely work. You don't have to figure it out alone. That's how it worked for me. How did you find out how much to charge?
So the first sort of freelance, okay, this was like even before I went freelance, when I was still studying, the first sort of freelance thing that I did was at after in third year, and it was for a on-set sound recordist. So I was lucky enough to like ask the lecturer, just be like, okay, so what do you think I should charge? And then he could be like, okay, well, you've got this experience, blah blah blah. I think I found somebody, like an experienced person, who told me that for editing they make this much an hour or this much a day or this much a week. Exactly what you said. And then I just sort of started as doing things for like way under that, and then just every job increasing it a little bit until I was at the same level as what they were, because I could tell these people like, okay, look, I'm cheaper because I don't have as much experience, but look, this is the thing that I did for this other person, so it still looks good, so pay me this much. And then I just kept doing that until I had the amount that I was happy with. And it's also, I think, an important thing is not to undercharge for too long. I think, Mark, you suffered from this for a while, because you were like, oh, but I charged this much on that job, so I should charge the same, which
Yeah.
which I think you should increase until you're at the level that you're happy with. Like, I think with the arts people, I mean, there's like a stereotype about it. People like try to negotiate with you, or they're like, oh, but you're only pointing a camera, and it's like, no, but I also spent all these years learning to point that camera. So I think when you value yourself, other people value you as well. Does that make sense? Like, if you know that this product that I'm delivering is worth this much, then charge that much. But then obviously don't overcharge. I think overcharging is the biggest mistake you can make, especially in the beginning. But if you are making a video, a promotional video, and it's sort of easy to compare promotional videos. So you can like be like, I'm making something that's at the same quality as this other person, or better, or maybe not quite there yet, and then you charge according to that. Because I think undervaluing yourself is just going to put you in a trap, because then you're with this client, and this client's going to tell their friends, yeah, I worked with this guy, he's really good and he's cheap. So then they go to you and you're like, okay, what's your budget? And they're like, okay, we know he's cheap, so we're not going to offer that much, when they might have the money if you charge more. So I think you should know what you're worth. You should know why you're worth that much, and you should charge it. And if it's something that you really want to do, and you know that these people genuinely don't have the budget for that, then you negotiate and you go drop your price. But if it's somebody that you know can pay, and they just don't want to, then walk away from the job.
Yeah, for sure. I was just thinking, now we're mentioning all this sort of advice and stuff you've learned, is that if you are a lecturer at a film school, please teach this.
Yes, please.
Please teach this.
Please.
It was so wild when I graduated and then I got into this world and just hadn't been taught about it at all.
Yeah.
Like this side of it specifically. Like, I don't know if there was in sort of producing classes, but
Yeah.
yeah.
And also it's stuff like taxes, like it just doesn't get taught to you. So if you are in film school right now, I would say ask the lecturer to teach on that.
Yeah.
Don't wait for them to teach you, because they're probably not gonna.
Yeah, because it's not a part of some syllabus, because
Yeah.
it probably doesn't have to be for some requirement, but I think you should make it a requirement if you are.
Yeah, agreed. Because it's going to be important for your literally your career. You know, if you're not making enough money to feed yourself, you're probably going to go into a different career. Which don't do the thing that you want to do, please. But yeah, I think we can wrap up that sort of freelancing conversation there. If you're feeling discouraged, I think try to look at the work that you're doing and look at the jobs that you're accepting. If you're just accepting jobs and you know they're not very good, but you have to pay the bills, maybe look, just be honest with the people and be like, this is way under what I usually charge, and I'm willing to do it one more time, but I don't think we can continue if you can't maybe raise your price even by a little bit. Because I think if you feel undervalued, that's also going to ruin you. If you feel like I'm doing all this work and they don't appreciate it, it sounds silly, but it's something that definitely happens, and it's something that a lot of people struggle with, and that's going to just make you want to stop doing it. So yeah, be honest with yourself and do what you love, and if you don't love it, do something else.
Sage advice. So that's it for this episode of Loop Pictures 2020 Retrospective Year in the View podcast Bonanza. I hope you liked it. If you did, then make sure to click that like button.
And while you're down there, if that subscribe button is still red, click it. I mean, cool things could happen, who knows? And if you have any other questions about anything that we learned this year, or anything else for that matter, leave us a little comment down there in the comment section. We try to respond to all of them. And did you know that we released the audio version of this podcast almost 3 weeks earlier? So you can go check that out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere else that you listen to your podcasts. But until next time, go out there, stay safe, and make your movie.